Good day, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mutembedza, lecturer from the Midlands State University in Zimbabwe. My co-authors are Mutembedza, also a lecturer from the Midlands State University, and Gerald Simba, postgraduate student from the Midlands State University. I'm going to be presenting a paper titled The Intervention of Educational Big Data Analytics from an Effective eLearning Experience, the case of Zimbabwe's higher and tertiary education. Big data analytics is a new technology the world over, and introduction of EBD is fairly novel. Zimbabwe's movement is very slow in harnessing e-learning and related technologies. And globally, big data is recognized in the industrial and health sectors and less considered in education. Technological investment is very little in Zimbabwe, especially in the educational sector, resulting in the production of a less marketable human resource for the global market. Therefore, sound policies to achieve quality education is imperative. In order to encourage the adoption of educational big data analytics, this research set out to do the following: to proffer the adoption and full implementation of big data analytics for an improved e-learning in higher and tertiary education in the developing world, to deduce the importance of big data analytics in achieving a more effective e-learning environment and keep pace with the global learner demands, to find out the current status of big data analytics adoption in the context of Zimbabwe's higher and tertiary education, to determine the current challenges militating against the adoption of modern learning systems in Zimbabwe. The study employed a qualitative research, and an interpretivism approach was used to analyze the responses and draw conclusions. 5 institutions of higher and tertiary learning were targeted. A response rate of 71% was achieved. Interpretivism approach was adopted as it would help in attaining the subjective views of the respondents. Common themes were identified from the data collected and they were analyzed. Due to the pandemic, most tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe have made use and extensive contributions and extensive investment in e-learning platforms. That being said, e-learning platforms together with EBD would improve the learning experience, making it more innovative. Another contribution or outcome that came from the study was that predictive analytics tools such as SPSS would help in a more thorough and accurate teaching process. Policy administration for the government becomes easier as they can access smart educational data which would have been derived from the use of tracking systems and predictive tools. On the status of adoption of big data through e-learning, it was discovered that tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe have little to no implementation of big data analytics resources. Those that do implement big data for decision making outsource the big data resources. It was also discovered that almost half of the staff in tertiary institutions are not equipped with the requisite skills to use big data analytics tools. Supporting initiatives from the government are virtually non-existent, which makes it next to impossible for the institutions to take advantage of EBD in the provision of quality education. Hindrances in the implementation of EBD, which were noted, included concerns from stakeholders on how, what, and why data was to be collected. Lack of technical skills to collect, manage, analyze, and protect the data generated. It was also noted that most universities were outsourcing big data human resources. Poor or little infrastructure for the implementation of EBD, lack of government support, and no proper strategic plan for the implementation of EBD. The research led to a plan which included strategy adoption, which included coming up with a strategy for the adoption of EBD in Zimbabwe's higher and tertiary education, execution of this plan, and a control model to monitor how the adoption and the implementation were being supported. 3 major stakeholders were identified, which are the private sector, which would provide the supporting financial resources, the government through the Zimbabwe Council of Higher Education as the regulatory body for all tertiary institutions in Zimbabwe, and the tertiary education institutions themselves. In line with the strategic management theory, the study adopted 3 facets for strategy execution and control, which are listed on the slide. The table outlines the 3 main stakeholders which were identified in the strategy adoption, execution, and control model. It illustrates how what each stakeholder is responsible for in each stage, from the founding principles, which is the adoption, the execution, and also the control. In conclusion, it was noted that though EBD implementation is important and an imperative for quality education in higher and tertiary educational institutions, there is rarely any EBD implementation or any related existing policy for higher education institutions in Zimbabwe. The challenges to adoption were particularly noted in developing nations such as Zimbabwe, which are characterized by lack of resources, economic downturn, and government policy inconsistencies. This study went on to propose a model as a way to encourage the implementation of EBD in the educational sphere, and further to that, a set of recommendations were also given to aid this implementation. These recommendations include proposing sharing of IT infrastructure and resources to reduce the cost burden on the government, and by so doing, private investors, private corporations would be targeted for this. Manpower development, that is the hiring of specialized skills for the successful EBD adoption and training of university staff to have the requisite skills. Implementation of sound IT governance strategies, and the inclusion of EBD implementation in policy making. Capitalization through financial institution support or distinctive business ventures, and lobbying for government as policymakers and private sectors for support. With this, I end my presentation. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.